This is a follow-up to my latest debate on dinosaurs, which was with NephilimFree, and Standing for Truth's follow-up video to that same debate. So let's get right to it. Nephy here claims that these were human tracks because they were determined to have a ball and heel impression and a human-like shape to them. And he tries to preempt the argument against this by simply claiming it's ridiculous that toes would fill in with mud, but he eventually ended up proving himself wrong, as usual. From the New York Times, they could not be sure whether the more flat-footed tracks represent a regular type of locomotion for some dinosaurs or merely occasional or aberrant behavior. What is clear from this article, and from the quote I just highlighted, is that these experts think that these were flat-footed tracks, not ball on foot indicative of human tracks. Now, Nephilim tried to debunk the common response to many of these claims. These tracks, both sets, were obviously determined by the experts to be dinosaurian, and I'll show you why. Now, this is one of the things that Neph tried to preempt, saying that this process is ridiculous, except this is exactly what we actually see, and we can see it with our naked eyes. Nephilim thinks he won because no one knows what dinosaur made these tracks, since it appears irregular near the heel, but they were found to be flat-footed, and they have dinosaur toes, some of which were filled in with mud. And he provides us with the pictures we need to prove this. So I wonder why he can't see it himself. So even in the picture that he shows us, he's contending that this set of tracks is the human one, and this set of tracks on the right, going towards the right, is our dinosaur. And we can see that with these dinosaur ones, some of the toes are actually filled in with mud. And if we look over here at the zoomed in part of the line of the human tracks, this one is a dinosaur. This foot right here. This is part of the tracks that he recognizes as dinosaurs. This one that's all the way on the right corner. The one that's right next to that I'm circling with my mouse here, that also has dinosaur toes. That's this footprint right here. You can't see them very well from here, but that has dinosaur toes, and it's in the same set of tracks as these that he's contending are humans, and they kind of look like humans from this angle. But then there's this one that isn't as eroded as these ones, and it has dinosaur toes. We can see this more clearly in better photographs. This is the human tracks that he's talking about, and they clearly have toes on them, running through the dinosaur tracks. Some of them have clear toes, some of them look like they have filled in toes, and thus some of them look like this. It's very clear. It's a shame that they have to use such blurry photos, but even then, Nephilim's own evidence contradicts his own conclusions, and it's no wonder, because the experts all disagree with him. So not only do we see this process demonstrated by all three of these existing in the same line of tracks, but we see that process for the tracks that he claims are definitively dinosaurs. And we see dinosaur foot toe prints in this line of human tracks. He just omits that. It's cherry-picking the data again. He looks at parts of the tracks that look like this and ignores the parts of the tracks that look like this down here. And even ignores when it's right in his face like this. In regards to Nephilim's claim that coelacanth was not in the same layers as dinosaurs, this is simply false on its face. The dinosaurs were widespread throughout these areas, and we lost track of them in the Cretaceous, same as the coelacanth. The fossils are mostly found in the same date range, contrary to what Nephilim says. He tries to contend they weren't in the same layers because the coelacanth obviously would be buried under the ocean, and other types of dinosaurs would be terrestrial. But he doesn't understand that there are differing levels in the same date layer. I could not get him to understand that. Now, looking down here, this is the gap between the last known fossils of coelacanth in the Cretaceous, which were ruled by dinosaurs, and today, where we've found small pockets of them still existing. So, it's possible that a similar thing happened with dinosaurs, and that they disappeared off the fossil record, and yet there's still a couple of them kicking around. We've proven this with coelacanth, but once they fall off the fossil record and we have no other record of them, there's simply no evidence. And a painting of a dragon on a cave wall is not evidence. We discovered coelacanth because we actually have physical specimens. We do not have this evidence for dinosaurs. That wouldn't disprove evolution or prove a young Earth anyway, so I don't know why this point is so important to old Nephy here. So again, there is a gap. There's no longer evidence that they're around. Until you can provide evidence to otherwise, we can't state that there is. This one I didn't capture quick enough during the live debate, so I'll go over it here. You'll notice immediately, this is supposed to represent a ceratopsian. You'll notice it's not really a very wide crest. It just kind of follows a skinny path. It looks more like the tuft of hair that's behind most dragons in Chinese mythology. And this thing even, look at these little nubs. This thing even has little horns or ears on the sides of its heads, and they're pointing backwards. Not to mention its bug eyes, which look like, to me, look like a chameleon. That seems more plausible to me, but these were also found in a collection full of dragons. There were a lot of these. Even the Genesis Park, who are creationists, I believe, they admit that these were found in a collection of dragons. Here's another one. Now, this is interesting. It's got some kind of lion or something, a curly tail. It looks a lot more like a chameleon now. And it's also got these horns on the sides of its heads. On the sides of its head, pointing slightly backwards or to the sides. Not consistent with ceratopsians. Now this one's somewhat more convincing, but it's a shame we don't get a head-on view, because look at this. It appears as if these two parts of the supposed crest are actually separate, that are extremely thin in the middle, and they appear like horns on the side of its head. Again, what's with these bug eyes? These are supposed to be accurate representations of dinosaurs. But what I'm seeing with these things, this supposed ceratopsian crest, looks like ears or horns on the side of its head, just like this image. You can see that it's not connected in the middle on the front plate, where it would on a ceratopsian. It has distinct pointed appendages on the side of its head. Now I'll go over this stegosaurian thing again, just because I have it here. Again, Stegosaurus has a very tiny head. That would be about half the size of that, and does not have horns or ears, and it has a long, powerful tail with spikes on it. That might be important. Now, notice how creationists don't think that this animal has a fin on its back. They understand that this stuff behind the animal's back is probably a leaf or some kind of plant material, but they aren't going to do that with this supposed Stegosaurus down here, because that's what they want to see, even though there are similar leaves all around it. But back to these. They supposedly are this kind of animal. But yet we see this in the same series. This and this. Dragons. Now, they have actually argued that this is also a dinosaur, a brontosaurus. But hold on, that's not what any brontosauruses look like. And why does it have the same head as these two? Why do these have the same head? Why does this Brontosaurus have the head of a ceratopsian? I think they're all just dragons. I think this is just a stylized dragon. This was the style of dragons. It has a swish of hair on its head and has ears or horns on the side of its head. And if you're contending that this resembles a ceratops, then the ancient people were depicting Brontosaurus with ceratopsian heads as from this. They even admit this, but they don't actually address it. Also, in this same article that I found was the source of many of these pictures, they claim that this creature here on this vase is evidence of a dinosaur. Well, in that case, then this, as I brought up in the debate, is also evidence of a real creature living alongside man, and that's ridiculous. Even NephilimFree knew to avoid this one. So he's actually acknowledging how damaging the argument is from the argument from Hydra, that you have to believe in other mythological creatures that were depicted by ancient people if you're going to believe that this was a dinosaur. And finally, for this one, my favorite, you can see that they de-enhanced to cherry pick out parts of the drawing that don't make as much sense. There's stuff down here and over here, and yet they still depict this wing or fin-like appendage on the top of this sauropod. Well, this is not an accurate depiction of a sauropod. They don't have wings or fins. And their tails stick out stiff and straight. They are not floppy. That is consistent with a 1800s understanding of dinosaurs, which was what Nephilim was saying was not present in these carvings, that they were accurate because they didn't have these artifacts of old understanding of what dinosaurs looked like, and yet this is his strongest piece of evidence, and it's got a floppy tail from dated archaeology, not accurate like he claimed it would be. Now you can even tell that there's kind of an eyeball and a little smiley face on the head, and that could just be the rock texture. You can find those kind of surface aberrations everywhere else in the body of the thing, but it looks to us like a face because of a certain phenomenon called pareidolia. That's why this looks like Godzilla, and that looks like a dolphin. You know what that looks like? That looks like a dinosaur too. But none of this is by design. It's by complete coincidence. You see a face in this, but it's actually just a piece of utility equipment. So we humans are programmed to see faces in things when they're not there. So this is not convincing as a eye and mouth feature, because that's what humans do. We see faces where there aren't any. So Neph really has to explain this winged brontosaurus thing that's going on here. I wasn't aware they had wings.
And they would say, dinosaur, because obviously it's a dinosaur. Now, to believe that people depicted these creatures, and then, which are accurate reproductions of creatures that actually did exist in the past, and think they got it right by chance, is not believable.
So I believe they drew what they saw, and this video will be my theory.
So then they should be able to get the tail accurate and tell us what this wing thing is. But they don't.
To make rock carving images, ancient natives used an object to chip away the original rock in a process called pecking, which leaves behind tiny holes or divots. In a recent report, researchers tried to discredit this interesting depiction of a dinosaur by saying the legs are not part of the image, they are not pecked or otherwise man-made, but they are stained with mud or some other light-colored material or mineral. As their sketch here shows, they maintain that what looks...
It could literally be anything. Like this thing. Like whatever this is. Man-bear-pig? Alien man-bear thing?
That what looks like a dinosaur is really just a snake glyph with a stain below it. Evolutionary biologist Phil Sinter co-authored a paper in an online journal, asserted the theropod-like image was not what it appears to be. They wrote that it is a composite of two separate petroglyphs, and that its apparent legs were created by a mud or mineral stain. They claim that this artifact is now officially discredited, which of course would be the sigh of relief news for evolutionists and dinosaur age, and bad news for the creation model of Earth's history.
What? No. This doesn't go towards creation, and it doesn't hurt evolution at all. It doesn't change any of the models if we actually found that dinosaurs lived a little bit longer into the age of man, just like coelacanths did. You just don't have the evidence for it. Just because there's a thing on a wall that kind of vaguely looks like it, but it's actually inaccurate after looking at it hard. I'd actually prefer for you to be right. I love dinosaurs. I wish there was a discovery where we discovered an ancient world where people and dinosaurs coexisted. But that doesn't go towards creationism, and it doesn't hurt evolution at all. So I don't know where you're getting this. I don't think you've thought.
Fortunately, since the method used in the study was basically done just by looking at the artifact, virtually any
That's what you do. Just look at it and go with the first thing that it kind of looks like to a kid. Yeah, that's scientific.
one can cross-check the author's observation, which is exactly what has been done, with common sense testing. But first, they lie about the lower body portion only being stained, and no peck marks making up the lower body, as peck marks extend down into
But far less. Look at the density of peck marks up here versus down here. It's not even comparable.
Robbins documented this petroglyph in the summer of 2010. The body and leg area pecking pivots were obvious to Robbins, who after reading Center's report replied, "From my picture,
Obvious to some IT guy.
it is clear that the whole dinosaur shape is chipped into the rock surface, not just a mud stain." Pretty sad when a lowly IT guy does better scientific investigations than scientists.
It's pretty sad when you're willing to go with anyone who doesn't have a degree in what you're talking about, just to believe your pseudoscience.
There is a difference between being debunked and being declared debunked. This petroglyph has not really been discredited as a dinosaur except through mass media. They know that the average person cannot access these easily without a ladder to see them for themselves, so they know that they can just get away with saying what they want and people will just believe it.
So what's the wing? Looks like a winged brontosaurus to me. Therefore, it must be one. Let's take another close look. Let's see. Yep, the peck marks definitely stop at the legs, and the tail just drops off and droops off. We know that sauropods don't drag their tails, and we know they don't have wings.
Jan Cameron did an extensive rock art rubbing of the dinosaur image. She was commissioned by a Canadian government to do a rock
And nothing else. You'll notice she didn't put the paper over part of the drawing. You can clearly see all this stuff over here.
on fossils because it picked up details that the human eye cannot see. Her scientific analysis absolutely reveals that it is a dinosaur.
Scientific analysis, folks.
The dinosaur image was made using a hammer, stone, and a deer antler tint. They would peck hundreds of holes to get the proper texture and create the image seen.
Again, you can see peck marks everywhere but the legs.
Still today on these rock formations. So when someone can walk up, place a sheet of thick paper over the image, and rub chalk over it, and get the perfect image of a dinosaur.
So I'll tell you why I don't trust this rock art rubbing. She clearly didn't rub outside of where she wanted to rub. She didn't even get the wing there. She should have rubbed the whole face of the paper. Instead, this is just art. This isn't actually scientific to see if the texture outside of the legs or around here is different from the surrounding rock. No, she just went in and traced the parts that she wanted to trace. And that's cute. They have a little rhyme that they can memorize to comfort themselves.
So when someone can walk up to get the proper texture and create the...
So what is this other crap over here? Again, you just filter that out. You cherry pick out parts of an individual photo. Not just research, you cherry pick parts of individual studies and individual images.
the image seen still today on these rock formations. So when someone can walk up, place a sheet of thick paper over the image, and rub chalk over it, and get the perfect image of a dinosaur.
She only rubbed where it looks like there's a dinosaur.
Now, let's give them this and say that the image of this dinosaur is not a dinosaur, and it is a complete fraud, even though that's not true. Now we have a huge problem as well for them, because there's a second sauropod dinosaur immediately to its right of the first, with its head turned back, looking at the other, and its tail going underneath the neck of the first. So now they have to discredit two dinosaurs, which they never show nor talk about in pictures.
Because it could be anything. They could have even dug the fossils up just like we do today. I wish this was true, but it's not convincing. Just something on a wall is not convincing. I want this to be true because it wouldn't actually refute evolution at all. I would prefer if you were right about this, but it's not convincing. It's just some vague cartoons on a wall, and you exclude the rest of it. And the rest of it doesn't look like anything. They really just look like squiggles. So I'm not convinced. And neither is the scientific community.
Stack this with the other evidence of Native American artifacts and the
Like a snake with legs is supposed to be convincing from an art form. They make up all kinds of monsters, dude.
of Native American artifacts and the scientific discovery of sauropod coprolites in the area, then the evolutionary dogma of 65-million-year-old dinosaur crumbles.
It would only show that there were dinosaurs a little longer than we thought. But you don't have that evidence. You don't have actual remains. You just have art that could be a dragon. And this is a mistake you really should not be making. The coprolites found in the Morrison Formation in Utah, you think that because it was found in an area where Native Americans lived, that means that that's evidence of dinosaurs walking with man. As if they're not supposed to be there. We get tons of dinosaur fossils from the Morrison Formation. It's because of the way that we date those layers that were underneath and are now brought back up by plate tectonics. That's why they're found in the same area as Native Americans, but not the same layer. So I don't know whether you're trying to pull something there or you really don't understand, but that's not a mistake you should be making.
I fear evolutionary paleontologists are highly indoctrinated, so they cannot see the obvious sometimes right in front of them.
Well, you're wrong, because it actually wouldn't change anything about evolution. In fact, I want you to be right, and it wouldn't change anyone's view on evolution. It's just dinosaurs would be around a little longer, just like coelacanth. Did the discovery of living coelacanth destroy evolution? No. As soon as you can find evidence of dinosaur remains in layers above the youngest known one, then you've just contributed to science. And that happens all the time. We add and expand. There's just no evidence of it. Cave art is not evidence of it.
They can suffer from paranoia because the current living dinosaur is a paleontologist's nightmare. It is a
No, it's not, as I've just explained.
smashing blow to evolutionism, which means they would have to admit what they have told everyone was wrong, what they teach is wrong, and what they believe themselves is wrong.
No, we would just add dinosaurs to the extant creatures, because we have evidence of them now. And we would just add them to the fossil record for modern day.
Their cognitive dissonance will never allow it. I urge you to investigate Native American
Actually, I would allow it. That is my preference. I really want it to be true. I would love to allow that. You just have to present some evidence.
legends and artifacts depicting dinosaur-like creatures. It should leave your mind far more open to the possibility that humans depicted what they saw, because no other logical
There's a possibility, but these are obviously lions with long necks. They have lion feet and lion faces, as I pointed out in the debate. Do you understand that even if a living dinosaur was found today, that would not overturn evolution? Let's discuss. If you guys like this content, join the discussion. Comment, subscribe, come on the channel. We need action in this great debate community, so happy to be part of it.